welcome to Dana Point. I'm Casey with Los Angeles Gallery of Art and Los Angeles Academy of Art. And today we're going to be at this wonderful beach. It's a small cove that has a great parking lot that's ready for you all day. And we're going to do some studies. We're going to do one painting and one small study. I don't think that we'll show the study, but I'll show you my painting. First things first, we're painting this cliff side, and that's going to be a fun challenge because the shadows are going to move real fast since it's early morning here. I have a palette here that consists of a cellulose sponge in a tin. So the tin keeps the sponge wet as I travel around, and it keeps the paint off of my other stuff. But the sponge itself is what keeps my paints wet. So I have this paint directly on the sponge. The other advantage of having it directly on the sponge is, as you can see, I literally just started to dip in, and I've got pretty thick paint going down. And if I want to change colors, I can easily grab some of the colors I was using in whatever my last piece was. Right now, my palette is much greener because I was working in a lot of springtime areas. But you'll notice that here, my palette is blue. There's a lot of purple. There's a little green. Lots of blues and sandy yellows. So that's what we're going to work with. And the good thing is some of those colors are already there for us because the palette always stays like this. I have not yet had to change out a palette except when I had a moldy white that entered my palette. I had to clean the entire thing and get a new set. But other than that, I haven't had any trouble. So I'll let you know how long it lasts in here. This cellulose sponge is the same sponge that the Stay Wet palette uses. However, mine is just a gray one that I bought on Amazon. As you can see, I'm not even doing a base drawing. I immediately blocked in my lights. And one reason is because I know the light is going to move very fast. And so if I block in the entire light, I know that I can just leave the rest into shadows. So my main goal is to just show me where my stuff's going to be. I don't really care yet about if it's perfect or the horizon line is nice because, as you know, the horizon line is the bane of my existence. What I do care about, though, is that I'm going to start showing you where the light starts and the shadows stop. And as you can see, as I go into the shadows, my colors are getting cooler. So even when I use like a yellow, I'm going to darken it with some purple or blue or a combination of both. In the warmer areas that I see, it'll definitely be on the purple side. And as the sky is reflecting more in these areas, you can see I'm adding a little bit of blue and making it a little bit lighter. So you can see that that edge of the cliff is actually turned towards the sky. And the sky is just reflecting. It's a little bit wet over here. It's a lot of rocks, and it's a very beautiful sunny morning. So you'll see a lot of that integrate into the cliff. There's also a cliff closer to me that's really dark, and I just put lines to indicate that. I will block that in later, but it's not a very important shape because it's only there to indicate that there's more than one layer. I think this painting would be just slightly boring if there's only one cliff edge to look at. When I paint my skies, the only main thing I care about is actually the value of the sky. In California, we get these incredible dark, dark, dark blues that are like really rich and they have a lot of color. And sometimes they're actually darker than my subject. So sometimes, like when I paint the house outside of my window, which I paint a lot just for practice and for fun, the actual white of the house is going to be brighter than the sky. So with the sky, my main goal is to make sure the value is correct. I do not want this to be just so dark that I'm confused, although if that's what I want to go for, I will definitely use that as a strategy. But I also don't want this one to be that light because, again, it was a very sunny, beautiful morning. So I don't want to go too light. Usually the light will indicate some kind of fog. If I use more whites, it'll be like brighter, almost like a glare. So I've gone ahead and gone with the middle value for my sky. But that is something you want to think about. It's not just the color of the sky, whether it's blue or whether it's blue, green, or purple. A lot of times here in California, it's greener close to the horizon, and then as it goes up, it goes out into blue and purple. But that doesn't matter nearly as much as having the correct value, because values are the base of every painting. Everything that you do that involves painting should have the correct values. All the temperatures you can mess with later. One of my favorite examples of that is Aaron Westerberg. His name is Aaron, and his last name is Westerberg, Westerberg. He does these really incredible, like almost like small paintings and studies where he will completely change the colors. So if it's like a skull, it'll be like a bright red and bright green. But has such control over his values that you know exactly what it is when you look at it. So as I'm carving in here with my paintbrush, I'm trying to think, okay, I'm now in there with a middle value. And it's because the light, as it passes downwards, comes down from the sky. Obviously, it's going to be a little darker at the bottom. I want to make sure, though, that it doesn't get so dark that it matches my shadows. I also don't want my shadows to get so light that they match my light side. So you see I put in that sky there. Eventually, I will darken that up a little bit because it's a little bit too bright. And I don't want people to jump around into these areas. So if you're in a light area and you have a bunch of random darks, the eyes will just go crazy. If you're in a dark area and you put bright highlight lights, the eye will definitely not believe you that that's a shadow. So keep an eye on, if you have the opportunity, try to keep your values as close together in those areas as you can. So I'm not saying keep them close together in general, but in those areas, make sure, try to emphasize a little less. So instead of changing value, so for example, right now I'm showing you, there's these really rich, dark green leaves on top. So the leaves on top are very much shadow, and all of them were in the shadow at the time that I painted this, even though some of them look like they're pouring out into the light. That's super dark. If it's in the light side, it's going to look weird. So you'll notice I start to lighten some of them. If you have something like that, why not try to make it a little more subtle? So instead of, say, going bright and then just putting this bright, dark, rich green on there, try to get it really close to the value you currently have and add a little green and see what happens. That's what I would have done had I not. I did actually end up lightening the light areas and darkening the darks, but the easier way would have been to keep it kind of a more subtle change in the first place, so I didn't have to think about it. Now I'm just showing my darkest area, which is the cliff that's actually in front of this mountain. It's kind of hard to tell what the composition will be until the very end, which has always been one of my favorite things because my students used to tell me that I paint like a kindergartner and that it all looks like scribbles to them until suddenly it doesn't. And I thought that was a huge compliment because I'm pretty sure that means that even though I know that I'm putting down the correct blue down here. You see I'm blocking in this blue. I know that's correct. I can just tweak it and make sure that that's correct. Until it's next to all the other elements, it's kind of hard to tell. So it's okay if you need to put it next to an element in order to get it right. Go ahead and do that. Your painting needs to be for you. So if you paint in a way that's different than other people, it's okay. If you want to skip some of the boring shit, because you are so like, for me, it's Notan. I know eventually I will cave in and do Notan drawings. Notan drawings are all black and all white, and they're emphasized on composition. So in this case, if I did a Notan, really only that cliff side would be black as well as the cliff in front. And it would be literally just white and black. And you can change the way that you diverse your whites and blacks because it shows you your value pattern, lights and shadows. But I can't stand doing them, so I don't. And that's okay. I'm giving you permission right now to develop your painting the way you want, when you want. Because going ahead and saying, no, I gotta do no-tans before I can start painting outdoors. I gotta do the no-tans first. That's what they say. Otherwise, I'm not gonna do right. It's gonna stop you from going outdoors and painting. And whatever it is stopping you, it's really just yourself. Go out and paint. Paint however you want. Paint whatever you want. And do it with your heart and go for it, because otherwise you won't get out there in the first place. As you go, you might be like, okay, next time I want to get more realistic, or next time I want more atmosphere in my painting. That's the kind of thing you go and learn. You learn how you can go get classes, that kind of thing. But going out there and painting, do not restrict yourself. Don't make up things. I don't need to do no tans yet. I'll do them later. You don't either. Just go out there and paint. So I'm also, you'll notice, struggling a lot with the changing light. I went out in the morning. I like to do sunrise. I am an early bird. I wake up at like 5 every morning. And so I finally found out that it was going to be sunny this day. We have had June gloom all year. I mean, basically all year. We had it all winter, and now that it's summertime, it's not supposed to come till June. That's why it's called June gloom. But there has been the marine layer every every day. So I saw in advance that it was going to be sunny, and I set my alarm at like 5 a.m., even though I was already awake. And I jumped out and I rolled out down there. It took me like 35 minutes with no traffic. And I got there right as the sun was rising. So it's worth it, but the sunlight changes really fast, especially over here, because you can see that the sun is actually spilling over the cliff. You can see that by looking at the right side of the painting, where everything's kind of purple and blue in the shadows. So on the left side, that's where the light is actually coming up, because the sun, as you know, rises in the east. So that means that this light part got bigger and bigger and bigger super quickly. This entire painting took me 38 minutes. Or 36. I think that's where I got the number 36 from. But basically, during those 36 minutes, the shadow pattern completely changed. Once I was done, I realized that some of my little greens you see up there, my little green cliff tops, those guys were supposed to be in the shadow when I originally started. So I should go back to the beginning and tell you that when you're going out to paint, take a picture before you start. You can get all the color notes from your painting. So, for example, I'll know what color I want my cliff light to be. It's going to be that nice yellow ochre with a little bit of white. And then I know that my shadows are going to be these beautiful purples and blues, right? Because that's what I see. Now that I have that information, I can correct the light and dark pattern based on my photo. So photos are important, but they're only important as, basically, I use them as references for drawing errors. I don't really use them as references for paintings unless I've done a study already from life. My preference is to just do a study from life. But if I can't be there, I will try to use it based on the colors of my painting, which means that I could take this painting now and take 5 different photographs of this cliff from every angle and every lighting, and then I could repaint it. And what I'll do is I'll keep this painting next to me so that I know exactly what colors I see. The camera can't pick up all the photos. My iPhone camera is fantastic, but it really, really washes out, especially in high contrast areas. And it really struggles with pinks and purples. And we have a lot of this beautiful, like, periwinkle in the sky. It's like a lavender color. I usually use Daniel Smith lavender for my skies here. But my phone never picks it up that color. It always looks like a tealy turquoise blue, the sky. So these are the things that you'll learn from literally painting it. I don't care really much if I get the drawing a little wrong. I can always go back and fix it. What I really, really want is any interesting notes I need. So, for example, I'm pushing some of the shadows down near the bottom of the cliff because I need to separate this cliff from the beach side. And so you'll see me starting to put those notes in. That's because that note seems like an important thing for me to show the depth of this cliff and that it's separated from the beach area. But if I don't need that information, I might leave it out and then I may come back in later and use a reference photo to do a bigger painting. You can even tell how fast the light is moving by the fact that my hand is in the sun now. My hand was fully shaded at the beginning of this video, which props to my iPhone camera. I'm putting in little things, but that's because I don't want them to get too dark when I go put them in, if I am to correct this. So, for example, there's these little rocks in the front and back in the back. And the rocks in the back, they're obviously going to be much cooler and lighter. And if I do them while I'm sitting here, I can see just how much cooler and lighter they are. But on a camera, they just look like black dots all over, even if you use the best settings on your iPhone. Obviously, professional photographers don't listen to me because you guys are awesome and you guys have skills and you can capture that stuff. But this is what I paint for, so I can capture it myself too. I'm switching to my small brush. I only really use my 1-inch brush, and then if I'm doing a smaller painting like my little trading cards they're about 2.5 by 3.5 inches, I use a 3/4 inch brush. And the other one I have is this one, which I really only use for like little detail shadows and things like that. I try not to use it ever. Sometimes I don't use it at all. But sometimes you got to get something really small or like a fine line to kind of like cohesively put everything together. And that's when I use a small brush like this. You get to pick what brush you like. I had to go through probably like 20 different types of brushes before I landed on these. If you like them, great. If they seem to be giving you some kind of struggle, so for example, this brush that I'm holding, the bristles are pretty stiff, so they do not splay out enough to do like, for me, I would prefer something else to do seafoam. So you're going to see that I don't actually put seafoam in here because I'm going to use a nice softer brush for the seafoam later. You may find that that works for you. You may find that the stiff one works for you, or that it picks up too much paint, or it doesn't hold enough paint, or you're using so much paint because it picks up way too much paint. It's really personal preference, and it's okay to try something and not love it. The paper I'm working on and the platform I'm working on are by Etchr. So this is the Perfect Sketchbook. That's what it's called, and I agree. It's pretty perfect. I love it. And then I'm using the Etchr Slate Mini, and I have it on a tripod here. So for my setups, this really works because I do not ever leave my paintings alone. I always hold them. Even my big oil paintings, I will grab it and hold it right up next to my eyes, and then put it back and walk away. But that's why you can see that I move my painting around a lot. I am moving it back and forth because I like to sometimes hold it up to the thing. Sometimes I want it to be closer to my palette so I can see everything at once. And other times I just want it out of the way so I can concentrate. I'm getting very close to done with all the little details that I want to put in. I do use this brush sometimes to change edges. So you can see me right now. I literally have a clean brush. It's not that clean. You can see my water is not super clean. And I'm just going to tap down some of these harder edges so that they blend in a little bit better. If you have like a seascape, the back edge between the sea and the sky are often very, very, very soft. Although in this case it was bright and sunny and there was literally like a dark line between the horizon and the sky. So I left that one pretty dark. But other areas that I might want to like de-emphasize would be the bottom of a shadow or the transition between the light and the shadow. So I will usually take that little brush and do it. And now you can see just how much that light moved and how I tried to keep it close to my initial block-in. This is Dana Point, and I had a great time. Let me know if you have questions.